This next incredible tale begins in the lush green hills of South Australia's Barossa Valley and ends in one of the most desolate places in Australia. In fact, not far from the famous Amos and Annette's case we looked at last week. This story goes to show that even the best prepared can come unstuck in the outback.
Peter Gish works in South Australia's wine-growing country. But when he gets the chance, he leaves this fertile land and heads for the desert.
Every trip we do, we're always well prepared. Fill a tucker box up with food, heaps of tins of food. Usually take a couple of big 20-litre containers of water, 7 jerry cans on the roof for fuel, 1, 2, 3 spare tyres, 3 or 4 spare tyres, just heaps of everything.
Hello, is there anybody out there?
Sue Miller also loves the desert. She and Peter were travelling partners in 1993 on a trip to Western Australia's Canning Stock Route.
We asked directions at Balgo, and the guy at the service station sort of said, well, yeah, you just go out there and you go left and off you go. Well, there's no signs, no nothing, and about 50 different tracks. And we took the track that looked most used, wrong track.
I figured that if we take the next turn right, we've got to meet up with the route somewhere, because we were sort of east of it. So if we turn right and head out west, we've got to meet up with the stock route somewhere. But didn't quite get there.
The road Peter and Sue selected was in fact a mining seismic line, a track put down for geological research and one of many such lines which lead nowhere.
It looked like a road. This is the old seismic bloody things they've got down there. And we followed that and followed that and followed that, and eventually it ran out. And of course the spinifex and little tree roots and everything in the ground sort of blew the tyres out, and that was the end of it.
We tried stuffing them with, leaves, and that got us about 20 k's. But the tyres had just had it. And because it's, rough terrain, you really just can't go anywhere.
That's where Peter and Sue stayed for the next 2 weeks. In the middle of absolutely nowhere.
There's not a great deal to do. You do things like clean the tent and clean the car and do crossword puzzles, and I suppose it's a bit worrying because you really, it's fear of the unknown. You don't really know how long you're going to be there.
People say, why didn't you try and shoot? Well, because we had a gun on board, but they say, why didn't you try and shoot wildlife or something to eat and all the rest of it? But there's nothing there. I mean, lizards, a few little spoggies or something, whatever's out there, but there's nothing.
I mean, it's a very isolated area. And, the idea is to ration just in case it takes, a month for somebody to get to you. But rationing is important.
And ration they did. Even cooking their rice in red wine to conserve water. Their hopes of rescue were pinned on a two-way radio. A radio they had thought was right for just such an emergency.
Once we got out there and started to use it, I could tell that it wasn't really flash, so we just had to sort of persist with what we had.
Oh, we just tried the radio, kept trying the radio, set up camp.
I was listening to a guy in Hawaii, trying to get someone that was 300 clicks up the road, and I'm bloody talking to a guy in Hawaii.
With their supplies getting lower and lower, the two persisted with the radio, unsure if their signal was getting out.
Calling CQ, CQDX is Quebec Delta Sierra 381, calling to a DX copy and standing by.
Eventually, radio enthusiast Malcolm Barrett picked up vague mutterings of an emergency over the radio in his bedroom.
With occasional bit of rain, but nothing much. And how's it been down your way? There you go. I tried to get as much details as I could from the person that was calling the Mayday, which is very hard to do due to the conditions making it fade in and out.
Malcolm wasn't just down the road, not even in Western Australia. He was in civilization, Mackay, Queensland, some 2,500 kilometres away.
I responded to it.
All right then, see you later.
Then asked whatever questions I could and collected what details I could and wrote them down. Then after that I contacted the local police and let them know that I didn't know if it's true or a hoax. And then after that I just left it up to them.
And with nothing more to go on, we really couldn't start anything at all. We thought if someone's in trouble, then more than likely they'll get assistance from someone heading north or south down the Canning Stock Road. Normally people would come down.
The message for help got back to Sergeant Colin Murray at Halls Creek Police Station. But it took a second radio message a few days later for the police to get enough information to take action.
And this time we were given a vehicle registration, which was a personalised plate, Big Tex. So at last we had something concrete to work on, which we could start inquiries to ascertain if there was in fact anyone out there that we should be searching for.
He did all the chasing around, found out who we were and whether it was possible that we were actually out there. And he was brilliant.
There was still a massive area to scan, and a light aircraft found nothing on day one of the search.
The next morning, we continued with the fixed wing search in the grid search pattern, and fortunately, on their second pass, they sighted smoke from the Peter and Sue's fire. A message was dropped to them to say, you know, what water have you got? And Peter, I think, wrote in the sand they had about 3 days' supplies left.
Saved in the nick of time. Peter and Sue had plenty of common sense and enough provisions to last them for more than 2 weeks in the desert. But there's a few things they didn't have which could have saved them a lot of trouble. We'll tell you about those things next.
Extremely harsh, the countryside. If you call it countryside, it's like an ocean of sand dunes and high spinifex and small stumpy trees. Very low rainfall, very harsh country to live in.
Get stuck out here and you're on your own.
These people had common sense. They weren't fools, but they made a couple of mistakes which compounded on each other, and they got into difficulty.
Despite Peter Giersch and Sue Miller's intense preparation for their outback journey, they say there was one thing they didn't have which would have saved the holiday.
I've never had so much trouble with tyres as I did on this trip. It's unbelievable. Never blown a tyre. It's just this one trip they just went. So should have had a couple of tyre braces. I probably could have tried to patch up a few. But unfortunately, no.
Perhaps the biggest lesson from Peter and Sue's experience is one in buying a radio.
people sometimes get a false sense of security with their single sideband radios, in that if you're on the west coast, you can skip over to the east coast and perhaps believe that your radio is very good, that you can speak to people on the other side of Australia. And vice versa, the eastern states can talk to Western Australia people. However, when you're in the middle of Australia, as these people were, the skip goes out to sea and there's no one to pick up your signal.
Australia is lucky enough to have the Royal Flying Doctor Service, which has developed special communication facilities to help those off the beaten track.
The nearest hospital in some areas isn't just down the road, it could be 2,000 miles away. So the only way of getting medical assistance to some of these areas is by aircraft, because the distances are so great.
Flight Coordinator Paul Cliff says that with the right type of radio, the Royal Flying Doctors will be able to pick up your emergency call from anywhere in Australia.
They should equip themselves with a high-frequency single sideband radio with frequencies ranging from 2 to 10 megahertz, and ideally with an emergency call button on the radio, which most of the modern radios now have.
This is my HF single sideband radio. To call a base in emergencies, select the frequency for the base and then press the emergency button for 30 seconds.
Okay, as you can see from the screen, the alarm has just gone off. I can tell that it's in the Meekatharra area. It's just a simple matter now of responding to that call. This is VKJ, stationed in the Meekatharra area, using their emergency button. Over.
VKL Port Henley, this is Mike. It was good to hear your voice. Thanks. Over.
For about $100 a week hire fee, you can have radio technology on your side. But remember, in the aerial search, it was Peter's old-fashioned signal which saved the day.
They almost flew over them straight away. So he got the fire going. There's plenty of spinifex, plenty of stuff to burn out there. There's no trouble there. And got a good smoky fire going, and as the plane trekked north again, they picked up the smoke.
Well, it's nice to end with a successful survival story. Remember the 4 priorities if you're ever stuck: water, warmth, food and shelter. Thanks for your company, and safe travelling next time you're out there.